interesting to see the growth of Anne-Marie and her story. You know, this is my second time seeing her present, and it's pretty profound. Get a kick out of that. So before I begin, thanks to Dean, Glenn, Anne-Marie for introducing me to the chamber here. But like I like to do all my presentations, I like to find ourselves in a comfortable seated position, putting the feet to the ground. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the breath. We're going to do 3 breaths. So we're going to inhale through the belly, inhale through the nose, from the belly, and exhale out the mouth. We're going to do that 2 more times. So inhale through the nose, from the belly, exhale, release. We're going to hold this at the top, the last one. So we're going to inhale, hold it, exhale, release. And so what you'll find is something shifted, something happened. And what that allows us to experience is what we like to call in this field, presence. And the idea of presence, we get to have a new experience. And the question that I like to present, what happens when you breathe? We breathe all the time, but what happens when we breathe? What happens when the breath becomes a tool? So as I'm going through life experiences, different things are happening. How do I handle it? How do I process it? Your breath can be your weapon, but what happens when you breathe? To conceptualize what happens when you breathe, breathing from the belly, the diaphragm pushes down into the internal organs, the kidney, liver, gallbladder, the intestines. It circulates the chi, the prana, the life force, the energy to move through the body. The heart, the lungs, they move on their own. They don't need your support. But when we breathe from the belly, we get to de-stress our bodies, de-stress our minds. So I can take 60, 70% of the stress that I feel that I have on a day-to-day basis, and just simply by my breath, I dissipate that. How amazing is that? And that's the resilience that we have. And I learned this interesting tool when I was in the hospital. One of the teachers I had, since I heard we have some teachers in the room, presented me with the question, how do you see yourself in 5 years? And ironically enough, I never thought about that. And this is why I teach the practice of contemplation. All problems are solved by questioning and answering. And when we answer the question, we have to be true to ourselves. This is how we begin to find our truth. So in this, I decided, well, you know, I'm from Texas, I'm living in Dallas. I see the Dallas Cowboys, I want to be a football player. So I take on that character and I become to be that football player. And I attain, because we have this ability to, when we put something out in the world, we can create it, we can attach to it, and we can build and work to get it. And I did that. I wanted every school in the country to recruit me. I chose Texas A&M because I was afraid to go outside of Texas at that time. I played 6 years in New Orleans, became to be all-pro. I went to the Houston Texans. My journey began when I got to Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, we were actually playing the Buffalo Bills. Ironically enough, we're in the state of New York. But we're playing the Buffalo Bills. I landed on my back after this particular tackle that I had made a million times. I ended up on my back. I couldn't move. In yoga, we call this posture Shavasana. It's the most vulnerable position you can be. And as a gladiator, I wasn't used to that. In front of 80,000 people watching, millions on television watching, I'm in the most vulnerable position of my life. And I'm freaking out, not because of my health, because of my ego, my identity that I was attached to. I was diagnosed with a spinal contusion. I suffered paralysis for about a month and a half or so. And I learned how to breathe in the hospital. And when the nurse came to me, she talked to me about the breath and conscious breathing. For me, how I was wired is you give me the playbook and let me execute. And the interesting thing enough about that is when you become to know that you can contribute to your healing, well, then you're not the victim anymore. And I held on to that. And I wanted to will myself to be well. And this is why I'm here. This is how I'm here today. Conscious breathing as a tool, processing information, realizing life is going to happen all kinds of ways, but staying resilient in my mind. How powerful are you? How powerful are we? And when we build these tools together, as we're finding, even in this concept of Chamber of Commerce, people coming from all parts of the city, we begin to put our heads together, create a think tank for solving problems, creating solutions, not marinating in the issues, because we're going to constantly, that's just how life presents itself. It presents itself with all kinds of happenings. But what we can do, come together and create solutions and emphasize solutions. And that's where the magic happens. The unthinkable happens this way. I've seen it. I'm living it. And what's possible for you, it's up to you. It's the limitation that you have in your mind is going to be your biggest obstacle. But when we choose, the possible, the unthinkable can happen, can show up. It's the beauty of connection. It's the beauty of why we're here and what we can do. So it's great to be here. And I guess we're diving into some of the things with nutrition. And I know Dean mentioned about this. So when I went on my journey, because I stayed a month and a half in this paralysis state, and looking at my life and contemplating it and seeing all the things that they say that you want to aspire to have, the houses, the cars. I probably had 3 houses at that time, 6 cars. I was confined to one room. So I began to contemplate, really, what am I doing? I can't drive the cars. I'm in one room. I have someone feeding me. I began to contemplate, well, what is this really about, right? And I began to go on my journey visualizing how I wanted my relationships to be. The dynamic of the relationships with my parents, to myself. I had, in my mind, I felt I loved them, but they didn't know much about me. I didn't know really much about them. We never really had that direct dialogue. And when I started to visualize myself going forward, I was like, well, this is the relationships I want to have. So that same idea, I guess, when I was a child, I began to create and visualize my life being well, what it would look like. And I guess as we're transforming out of trauma, it's like that plane that's wanting to take off and fly, because we all have the potential to fly, but we carry the baggage that loads us down. So I began to realize how I can decompress those things off my mind, because I realized that could possibly hinder my healing. So I began to look at all my life and things like that. And when it comes to health, I found another person. Dr. Sebi. I was looking at a YouTube page, and I was like, I saw this video. This one singer, Left Eye, Lisa Left Eye Lopez, and I was like, I need to go meet him. And he's in Honduras. And I was like, I need to go meet him. And, from years of compromising my body, which is very interesting, how many, we had to talk on relationships the other night, but when did you first realize that you had a relationship going with yourself? We tend to think that the relationship happens when we meet someone else. But I'm here to tell you and suggest to you an idea that the relationship has been ongoing with you, with yourself. In the relationship that I had with myself, I had constantly put myself in compromised situations. Meaning, as a linebacker, I'm every week in, week out, putting myself in front of 300-pounders, 6'6", 6 something, 300-pounders to run into this brick wall so my body's looking at me like, I don't trust you. You want to be compassionate to me? You want to love me? I don't trust you. And so through my yoga practices, I teach it as a relationship building concept. You talk about patience, you talk about compassion. Well, I had to initiate that. I had to establish that with myself. It's a cultivating thing. It's like, people talk about just love. Well, after years, for me, 32 years of not really loving myself consistently, well, that's the kind of love I had. And then ironically enough, we want to try to share that with other people, but that's another lecture. It's another talk. But I began to search out ways I can find my healing. And one of the teachers, like I said, I went to Honduras. In all the years of the collisions, the concussions, I had so many concussions, I lost count. Funny, when people talk about concussions, one time I was national television, I made a tackle and I went to the other team's sideline and sat on the bench as if it was my team on national television. And then that's not even really the hard part. I guess the worst part of that is when I got back to my sideline, they were like, well, how many fingers you have up? And I said 5. And I said, you're good, get back in there. Oh. That's my era anyway. They do something different these days, but hey. But so Dr. Sebi introduced me to a concept, and he told me one thing that really changed my life. He's like animal human Humans cannot process animal DNA. And coming from Texas, I mean, I eat probably 5-6 times a day. And because I was choosing to be well, I listened to that because that stuck to me and it made so much sense logically to me. I went on another path of veganism. And you gotta find your truth, you gotta find your way. But this particular teacher taught me so much about nutrition and why nutrition is so imperative for us. Because we look at the outer aesthetics, we look at but the inner is what's missing. The inner is what's being dictated by what we're fueling ourselves with. The fuel that we put in our bodies is for the elevation. We talk about the high vibration that we want to live, it's going to be dictated by what we're injecting into our bodies. And then what we're putting, and surrounding ourselves with the people around us as well. That contributes as well. So we begin to look at ourselves as a little something different. We actually, in truth, become and be the medicine. It's like, even in a sense, like your smile is alkaline. Your frown is acidic. When I can come and share space with you, I can bring you a nurturing, compassionate feeling that makes you feel good. But I also can leave you and make you feel bad. We are the medicine. We begin to be the solution when we put these things into action, meaning solving problems. When we begin to come together and create solutions to combat the issues. And we have that ability. And it's an amazing journey that we can find ourselves on. And things change, things shift. But we are doing it. In some cases, we kind of like want to sit back. I've had some tremendous opportunities to work throughout, the medical world, and I get to actually, maybe because of my background being a football player, I don't know, but they actually let me go into the hospital room with the primary care physician and prescribe an alternative to the prescription drugs that they're suggesting. And so I see patients come in and out wanting a pill to fix them. I see patients coming in and out with an idea that they have this belief that they have to stay on high blood pressure medicine. And I'm suggesting to them if they just do simple inversion, they lay next to a wall, put their feet over their head, their blood pressure will go down naturally. Allow the circulation from the lower extremities of the body to circulate to the upper. And when you stand up, it recycles. You take the pressure off your body to learn to breathe, to understand the liver. The emotion attached to the liver is anger. So if I'm constantly in anger, well, then it's going to ultimately blow out my liver. The kidney is fear. The intestines is worry. The heart is grief. The lungs is grief. Again, when we begin to understand ourselves and know how to manipulate ourselves, heal ourselves, and really take that in consideration as a truth, things can happen. I know, and granted, my father's a preacher, so a lot of patients I get to see, they say, well, I'm praying to God, and I understand that dynamic because I grew up in that. So I come to a situation of breaking it down in patterns. I say, okay, so you have cancer, you have diabetes. Well, let's break down the scenario of your life, and let's see the patterns that you created to get diabetes. And as you created these patterns to get diabetes, we can find a solution in changing those patterns to undo diabetes. And that's on you. And things can work just like that. I've seen it work for myself. I've seen it work for others. I take a retreat actually to Honduras, and I hope I'm not going too over. But I take a retreat to Honduras, and I take people who, one woman had metal toxicity, and the doctors had given up on her in Beverly Hills, Sinai. They were like, well, we have to sign this slip because if you die, it's not on us. And in Honduras, we have the thermal waters, we have the different herbs that we use, the alkaline diet that we use, and to see her barely able to walk, and in 5 days seeing her almost running